A lot of Metroidvanias use different styles, level design, story, and even humor in order to stay different from other Metroidvanias and maintain their own identity. You can tell which game is which because they have very differing styles. And even though Gato Roboto is very derivative from Metroid, you'll still enjoy each game in very different ways. But some would say that they're still too similar to each other. At the end of the day, holding left moves you left, holding right moves you right, hitting the attack button attacks. But I'm going to talk about a game that attempts to break the mold when it comes to movement and exploration. In Dandara, there is no gravity. You can't walk forward or backward. Instead, you point and jump. And now you're on the ceiling. The levels are beautifully constructed to support these movement patterns, which you'd think would look weird and disconnected to the story, but they did a really good job connecting the storyline to the mechanics. Of course, bouncing around the environment, wall to wall, ceiling to floor, isn't the only thing you do in the game. It's still a Metroidvania. You can still shoot and block, but it suddenly becomes a different game when you encounter an enemy, as when you dodge, you find yourself on the ceiling or wall, trying to reorient yourself to shoot at the monster again. And it makes for super fun and engaging combat, especially with the boss fights. Mainly because they take advantage of how the player moves and make the boss fights more interesting. And I know you might be saying, "Oh, but every game does that." And you're right, but I'm talking about level design specifically for the boss fights. They're remarkably simple for the most part, but it still makes for a super butt-clenching and interesting fight. I actually think the game should have had way more boss fights, as they were my favorite part of the game. Since the combat is so difficult to get used to and the enemies just get harder and harder, I found myself dying a lot. So I got very familiar with the ghosts left behind containing all my loot, which isn't a new thing in games at all. Hollow Knight uses this system, Shovel Knight does too. Hell, even the LEGO games kind of do this. You'll still find sick upgrades, explore, get lost, explore more, get lost again. All the classics of a good Metroidvania. And while I'd love to just talk about the innovation this game brings, mechanic-wise, I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention the breathtaking soundtrack. I'm not even playing the game right now, but I still have goosebumps. The sprite work and animation is also beautifully done. The artwork surrounding the game in general is just gorgeous. I think my main gripe of the game is that it doesn't actually go on for very long. I beat the game after around 7 hours of gameplay, which, don't get me wrong, is a long time, but it still felt a little short. I feel like I could have found more upgrades and beat like 3 more bosses, and the game still would not have overstayed its welcome. It's a good game, but not everyone will like it as much as I did. Takes a while to get used to the controls, it can be very rage-inducing, and you should definitely have a controller if you're playing on PC. But I think most people would enjoy this game. So if you're down, give it a shot.